Hello dear listeners, welcome back to my channel. My name is Selena, I'm a clinical psychologist. Let's get right into it.
We need alcohols.
Right.
Alcohols.
Right. Not just one alcohol.
Alcohols.
Right, just
Plurals.
different blend. You need
Blends.
the ladies, you need the booze.
You need some water.
For watering plants?
No.
What?
No, I don't know if guys have noticed this, like a lot of ladies drink water at parties. They
Right.
just, so you have, if you don't have what they need, they're gonna leave.
Right.
Gotta
right.
keep them there.
Right.
You need locks on the doors.
Okay, this is sounding kind of dangerous now.
It's a little kinky, but
Yeah.
rock with me, but just
Right.
check it out. You need a lot of heat. A lot of heat. Yeah.
Heat. You mean that physically the place has to be hot?
You don't have no air conditioning.
No air conditioning.
No.
Why is that?
Heat affects the alcohol, and it also affects, like, everybody gets a little bit more comfortable and loose. Builds up a nice little sweat.
That just sounds disgusting. What are you talking about?
Depends on the way you look at it.
Unbelievable, right? Now taking into account the things that are alleged, which include trafficking and drugging people at these freak-off parties to take advantage of them afterwards, it is incredibly difficult to see any lighthearted side to what they're talking about. Because when I'm isolating P. Diddy as well, I was kind of looking for signs that he might be joking around, but I think the doubling down or giving details really indicates that he is actually truthful with what he's saying, such as the comment with the lock. And it is so unbelievable to just think about how much thought he apparently, allegedly has put into all these parties. It seems like he has really calculated the smallest detail, such as the heat in the room for people to loosen up and feel better and feel sweaty and get into the mood, to put locks on the doors. Why shouldn't people just be allowed to leave whenever they want to leave, right? If it's consensual, if people agree that that is a part of what they're doing, then I could see arguments for it being okay, although it is still questionable. But to my knowledge, allegedly, a lot of things happened that people didn't consent to as well. So then that would be incredibly dangerous, of course, to lock the door, especially if you're taking into account that, again, allegedly, people's drinks were spiked and they sometimes even fell unconscious, or they were in very impaired conditions, where something like a lock on the door would be a great enough hinderer for them to actually not be able to escape. It just makes me so incredibly sick to my stomach to also see how many times P. Diddy seemingly got away with making such remarks. How can a person be so open and upfront about it and get away with it for so long, right?
DJs aren't supposed to pass out, but when they come to one of my parties, this is what happens to them. I put him to sleep.
Next day, right?
Yeah, put the drink on his head.
There you go. There it is.
I really didn't like seeing this video. So a few things could be going on here, right? Apparently he's a DJ. It might be the case that he was just making music throughout the whole night and got so tired that he just passed out in a way. Another option could be that he just drank himself into unconsciousness almost, or that he just drank so much that he passed out. But another thing could be that his drink was spiked and that Diddy very consciously put him to sleep. So there are a few ways to interpret it, but I find it a bit alarming that people around him and Diddy himself as well were not positioning him in a way where he could more easily breathe, or it seemed like they were making a joke out of it, putting a cup on his head. I don't know, but if I would see someone or my friends in that condition, that would not be what I would want to do, because I would be concerned for them. And again, the way that Diddy has phrased it almost seems like, and I'm not saying that this was the case, but from his wording, it almost seems like he consciously took the decision to do something that would make him pass out like that.
You're going to hear about my party. They're going to be shutting them down. They're going to probably be arresting me, doing all types of crazy things just because we want to have a good time. Whenever you bring up a different element into people's environment, things that broaden people's horizon, people get intimidated.
It's interesting that Diddy seems so honest and self-aware almost about what he's doing. It's like he was such an open book, putting it all out there, saying, I wouldn't be surprised if we were arrested actually. And it's interesting that he is relating it to people's openness about experiences such as this one, because in a way he is almost selling the narrative that if one doesn't agree with the things that happen at these parties, that one would be close-minded. And I do also find that it can make a person feel quite invalidated in case they would have joined these freak-off parties, let's say, and they felt like they were taken advantage of or things happened that were not supposed to happen, allegedly. If they would see such a clip, they would think, maybe the fault is really with me and other people would be fine with this, but it's just my problem that I don't think this should happen. It also makes it more difficult to actually out how harmful these types of events can be when the person is so seemingly open about the dangers or the things that it entails. And it can really downplay how harmful these events can be. People almost don't dare to look into what it actually entails.
Because P. Diddy be wanting to party. And you gotta tell him no. You got to tell him no. I did.
Events. It really seems like this person in this video clip noticed that you have to be very firm in what you're saying. If you don't want something, you have to be like, no, I don't want this, because otherwise he will not listen. And this might indicate that Diddy is quite low on empathy and he just wants to put his own needs and wishes above other people's. And if we build a bit of a personality profile, and I'm not diagnosing Diddy at all, that would be unethical to do from afar, but the characteristics that he's showing, being so reckless, being sensation-seeking, not having any empathy or remorse, being quite concerned about status and control and wealth, it does fit with an antisocial personality disorder profile. An antisocial personality disorder is more commonly known as sociopathy or psychopathy, which is not a psychologically established term, at least in the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. However, I still wanted to include those terms because that is how some people make sense of it. And by far, not most people that have antisocial personality disorder or might show some signs and symptoms would be harmful or dangerous. That is quite a myth. Most people, they learn, they mask, and they understand how they need to behave to get by in society and not to harm people. So quite often they will have cognitive empathy, which means that they will understand which behaviors or which acts will induce what emotion in the other person or how it will affect them. It's not really a felt empathy, not on an emotional level, but at least people will understand by studying and by analyzing people how they will react to certain things. So again, just because a person would have antisocial personality disorder, it doesn't mean that they would be a criminal or that they would be dangerous or harmful. But it can happen that people will engage in these ways because having no remorse or at least having blunted emotions might make it more likely to behave in ways that might harm other people.
As the mother of a now 16-year-old,
who I met backstage,
he did?
He's a great young man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. You represent a lot.
I think this clip right here needs a bit more of a backstory. So whatever I will say from now on, again, is alleged. So I'm not claiming that those things happened, but allegedly they had minors present and there were victims present as young as 9 years old. And Wendy was apparently quite outspoken or aware of this rumor. So when we look at this video, we get the sense that she might have been afraid or Diddy might have threatened her in a way by saying that he met her son backstage. Of course, we could be reading too much into this, and it might be that Wendy just naturally stuttered. Maybe she didn't know what to say or she was reminded about other things. It is, however, worth mentioning because I think it does stand out. And it might be an illustration of how certain people who might have been more aware of what allegedly was going on might have been afraid to speak up for themselves or their family. Diddy in this video clip also seemed very confident. He was smiling throughout. He was looking at Wendy, observing what her reaction would be. And I think Diddy in general seems like someone who's very confident, who has very low anxiety, who keeps very steady eye contact. So it is just an aspect of his personality, but I think it does add to the fear that one might feel being around him.
You clearly have a lot of people going, why would you do that? Why would you give Chris, a guy who hit a girl, and he's jet skiing around in your, I don't understand. Because, I mean, listen, I was a huge fan of Chris's. I love Chris, his music. He's a talented guy, but to hit a girl.
Yeah, because I know both of them, and it's my house. And I'm allowed to give my house to whoever I want to give my house to. That's number one. Number two is that I'm the type of person that I don't cast a stone or cast a judgment on anybody. And so if a friend or friends ask me for a favor, then I'm gonna be there for a favor as long as I know that the energy of the favor is positive. I'm not gonna get involved in it. I'm not gonna pass judgment on it. If I could be there as a friend during hard times, then I'm gonna be there as a friend.
Right.
But I don't know the exact particulars. I didn't get into it. I'm not gonna do this or do that. It's a dark time for them, and I was there more as a support.
But I don't want any girl out there thinking it's okay to go back to a guy who hit her. I don't want any girl to think that.
I don't think.
And I don't mean to put you in that, because it's not you.
No, but you are putting me in it. So I'm gonna speak on it. I don't think that it's right for anybody to hit anybody at the end of the day, you know. And I don't think it's right. You know, I think that we all have to be honest with ourselves as adults and people that have been in relationships, you know. We know sometimes those relationships get ugly, you know, and sometimes it doesn't come out into the forefront the way this one has come out. And it's a lot of stones being thrown, and we don't know exactly what's going on. These are two young individuals. We need to pray for them, and we need to give certain support, but you don't need to start just saying that you know something that you don't know.
So this subject to me seems quite complicated. Let's say we didn't know what we know about Diddy. On one hand, I can understand why he would say, okay, both of these people, they are my friends. I know them. I have seen aspects of them that maybe not a lot of people have seen. I see them as good people, and I feel like it was just a dark time in their life. They had a mishap. So although I personally would not agree with that, because I think physical violence in no shape or form is tolerable or acceptable or okay, I could see someone still showing understanding towards the perpetrator in some way. Now, I said this not taking into account what we know about Diddy, right? But a video has been published, a security camera footage in a hotel in which he has physically harmed his ex-girlfriend, Cassie, I believe her name was. I believe that that incident occurred after this interview. Now, taking that into account, I can't help but to feel like he was dismissive of the extreme nature of the things that happened between Chris Brown and Rihanna at that time. And it could be that he very much understands Chris Brown's sentiment and therefore shows more understanding or more tolerance towards his behavior. And yeah, I could really see that have an influence in this interview as well. I don't know if at that time he has already been physically violent or not. Even if he wasn't, maybe he knew that he had the potential to engage in such ways, or he was just too ignorant to see how harmful it could be. And that is why he expressed these things about Chris Brown and Rihanna at that time. Taking into account what we know, I think it is quite alarming to hear such a thing. And I would have wished for him to be way more clear-cut on it not being okay at all to engage in such physically harmful and abusive ways. But that maybe outside of us not accepting that kind of behavior at all, we might still hope for rehabilitation rather than to completely reject the person and in a way take away the possibility of them getting better.
Hey, it was curious. I got a chance to see some things.
Yeah, but you were 13. What were you seeing?
I went there to see the lifestyle.
Right.
And I saw it. And it was but I don't know if I could indulge and understand what I was even looking at. It was pretty wild.
So after this video, Usher answered when he was asked if he would allow his own children to attend these events. Apparently he very clearly answered with a no. So with this video clip, I find it quite important to point out Usher's age at the time. He said that he was 13 years old. And I know that Diddy was a mentor for Usher, or had legal guardianship over him. And I believe that it is incredibly irresponsible and also, again, ignorant to allow a person at Usher's age at that time, which is 13, to attend these events. Because what we have heard so far is that there were a lot of naked people, that a lot of sexual acts took place, and it was apparently the case that his parties were divided into two sections in a way. The first half would be the more PG half, and then the second half would be the wilder half. But from what I have heard so far, allegedly, a lot of minors had been exposed to very inappropriate things that they shouldn't have seen or witnessed at all. And I do believe, or it does look like, Usher was one of them. And that is also why he says that he wouldn't allow his own child to go through what he went through. Now, it seems like he recalls this situation with a rather lighthearted mood, and it might be that he was not affected by it. However, more often than not, if children are exposed to very inappropriate things, it can influence healthy development. They might not even understand it, but it might be mildly traumatizing. It might lead them on a path that otherwise they wouldn't have went, or they might allow themselves to be treated in ways that might not be okay. So it can express itself in all kinds of ways to be exposed to these things at a young age.
Let me ask you something. I don't know if this is just made up myth or if this is true, but I'm told that when you go to a hotel, anytime you go to a hotel, you don't just check in the way everybody else does. You send someone ahead to prepare the hotel room for you.
No, it's called preparing the sexy.
Preparing the sexy.
Yeah.
What's preparing the sexy?
I mean, when I walk in, I definitely take pride in being the originator of the preparation of the sexy.
Yes.
Yes, and that's candles. I like candles.
So what stands out in this video, and I think we might have noticed a bit of a pattern, is how self-assured and confident Diddy seems when he talks about these kinky acts, let's say. It almost takes away from the power of a response, because if Diddy is so upfront and so open and even takes pride in what he's doing, then it almost seems worthless to respond with how dangerous, harmful, or creepy these acts are. And it again shows how calculated it is. He puts so much thought into it that he apparently takes care of these events before he even enters that place. It seems like it is a huge aspect of his personality and of his identity. And I think we also see that because other people, they know him for those parties. So it is quite often a subject of interviews. It almost seems like when people think about Diddy, that is what they think about. And I do think that this whole subject also has to do, at least a little bit, with our societal problem of rejecting certain aspects of ourselves, which might be more wild, more sexual, more crazy. And I'm not relating that to the things that happen at these parties at all. I'm not talking about aspects of ourselves that are harmful to other people, but let's say consensual things that are not really widely accepted, where we feel embarrassed or ashamed of even openly sharing that. If people shut down those aspects about themselves, then it can lead to these situations becoming so extreme, and everyone in a way agrees that that is the time and the spot where these wild things are taking place and where no one talks about them afterwards. And that becomes a real problem, because then we have these isolated places, these isolated people or isolated events where these incredibly harmful or dangerous things happen, and no one talks about it, everyone keeps it a secret, and that aspect of themselves becomes even more separated. And again, I believe that that is at least partially a result of us not allowing ourselves to more openly discuss sexuality or these aspects of ourselves that we have rejected in a way. The more we suppress, the more tension can build up that can be channeled into really unhealthy and harmful things. And I think that we can see that more often when things are censored to quite an extreme extent, that people almost become more driven by their instincts and engage in more harmful ways. But again, I don't want this to be taken in any wrong way. I'm not saying that we should just openly allow harmful acts to other people. I'm not talking about those things at all. But we all know that there are certain things that we still feel ashamed about when we want to express ourselves with other people, where we think, okay, this should stay a secret with myself, or I can't really say that because otherwise I will be perceived in a weird way. I think it is quite normal and human to experience such a thing, and I think it's such a shame because more often than not, it's a very universal experience. And it would alleviate so much of our burden if we were to more openly talk about these things.
What's up, man? You good?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, young brother, everything's good?
Everything's
Selling
great.
out arenas and everything?
Yeah.
Starting to act different, huh?
No,
you ain't been calling me and hanging out the way we used to hang out.
Well, I mean, you try to get in contact with me, through all my, partners and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But you never really got my number, so.
Right. Okay.
My number?
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you my number.
Yeah.
So with this video, I'm not quite sure if they are playing around or not. At least the impression that I get is that Justin is pretty uncomfortable. He stumbles on his words quite often. He seems a bit distressed. He's rocking back and forth. He's stuttering. And with this clip in particular, I am a bit biased, let's say, because I have some prior knowledge. So in my previous video where I analyzed P. Diddy's and Justin Bieber's relationship based on a few clips, I did get the impression that there was a strong power dynamic between them. And that is not only based on the age difference, but also based on Diddy's characteristics him overpromising things that he didn't really live up to, him making Justin dependent in some regards, and so on and so forth. So taking all of that into account, this video does also seem more alarming to me. The way that he's talking to Justin is again very assertive, and he's making him feel guilty for not reaching out to him. Now again, it could be a joke. I do also have a difficult time believing that he didn't have Justin's number, so there might be an aspect of joking in there. I'm not quite sure about it. But again, even Justin's demeanor outside of that seemed quite sincere. I'm not saying that manipulation is what was going on, but for manipulation, inducing a feeling in the other person strategically to make them behave in a certain way can be a sign, such as making them feel guilty or shameful for having done or not having done something. And in this case, it could be not reaching out to Diddy, which would then make Justin feel quite guilty and make him take that action, which would be based on that emotion that was induced in him by Diddy. So all in all, looking at these resurfaced clips, I think it can illustrate a lot about Diddy's mindset, about the culture, about other people's mindset when it came to his events or him in general. And I do think it is unbelievable that these things could prolong and exist for so long as they did. It is also an interesting case study now, again, taking into account the things that are alleged and the things that we know, that we can pinpoint these patterns and behaviors and more easily understand where they're coming from and what they're entailing. And at this point, I do also want to mention that if a person tends to do something more often, if they repeat a behavior or if they show a certain behavior or characteristic repeatedly, then that will make them more likely to do such a thing in the future. That is just a very simple predictive model. If we have more data points that hint into the same direction, it will make it more likely for them to do such a thing in the future. All right, everyone, that does it for this episode. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about my analysis, but also about the video clips. Otherwise, I would very much appreciate if you could leave a like and subscribe to my channel, because it definitely helps me out a lot. And otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Take care.